Once a month, we get an opportunity to sit down and visit with Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game, sometimes even more frequently than once a month. In fact, if you had an appointment, you couldn't make it last week, but there was a big meeting you had last week.
We did. It was on our proposed changes to our hunting seasons, and I just kind of wanted to go over that. If you've got a complaint about the department or you'd like to see something changed, right now's the time to voice that opinion. Um, we've proposed a bunch of changes, and um, for the upcoming hunting season, I'm just going to go through a couple of them if I could, Bill.
Hmm.
We're looking up at Unit 49. We've got a lot of elk. We're a couple thousand elk over in Unit 49 over objective, meaning we have a lot more elk in that area than we need. And some people will debate that because they didn't kill their elk last year. But our aerial surveys revealed close to 6,000 elk in that unit, and um, would like to keep that closer to four. Bull numbers are really good. We're proposing to either make that a general hunt where everybody can just go buy a tag and hunt it, and allow the habitat to be the limiting factor. I mean, just the steepness in the mountains. It's a tough unit to hunt just because it's steeper and there's not a ton of roads in there, and so. But we've got tons and tons of depredation going on up there right now, meaning elk getting into haystacks, and
Hmm.
and it's not just the winter. It's just every year we're having these issues, and so we need to knock those numbers back a little bit to a more of a social carrying capacity, so people don't get so upset at them up there, and we don't have so many uh, traffic incidences and things like that. So we're looking at either making it general or we're proposing two more 200 cow tag hunts. So that would give us five hunts with 200 tags in each of them, and they'd be spaced for about 7 or 8 days with a week, 4 or 5 days off. Those are one of the things we're scoping. Another thing we're looking at is I'm just going to hit the really big things. Is we're probably going to drop all the youth, either sex, general season harvest um, up in all our northern units, just because of how hard this winter's been. We're losing a lot of fawns up there, and so we looked at the numbers on how many does the youth had been taken, and we're actually scoping that. We're looking at doing that for this coming fall, and there's a bunch of other little things. We're adding some more tags. We're looking at adding some more tags down here in 47, down on the Jarbidge Bruno. And so, and I guess the reason I tell folks this is if you want these proposals, if you would like to see something different, you've got till tomorrow basically to get your surveys filled out online. You go to fishandgame.idaho.gov, or and click on the hunter survey. You can look at all the proposals statewide, and I guess I should clarify that Unit 49 would not just hang out there by itself as a general hunt. It would also be 49, 50, and 36. A would be all part of that general hunt because we're working with salmon and Idaho Falls and whatever they get out of their scoping. We'll combine all the information. But right now is the time to say what's on your mind, and give Daryl Mites a call. He's our regional wildlife manager, and you can get a hold of him at 324-4359 if you have some other things you want to say to him. But just wanted to get that out there. We had pretty good turnout, so the meetings, Bill.
I think that finally you got the message across last month that you're making the time available. Please come.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. We really push these things, and In 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 Twin, we probably had 40, 45. In Sun Valley, we had around 50, and in Burley, we had around 25 or 30 people show up. Kind of marginal. I mean, a lot of years we'll have over 100 in each of those meetings. However, you can also go online, and we've got video clips on YouTube of the proposals. There's three videos: one on deer, one on elk, one on pronghorn, uh, mountain lion, bear, and wolf. Those are all combined because there's not the only real change we're looking at that is starting a new hunt over in 55, 56, and 57 because of a growing pronghorn population over there. So, but go online, look at that stuff, give us your feedback so that we can do what we need to do for wildlife.
Mentioning we probably seen in some spots it snows very deep in some of the mountains. what, 8, 10 feet in some places.
Oh, it's horrid in some place. Sun Valley on the level, we had almost 4.5 foot. You know, they still got a lot of snow today. The interesting thing is we thought was getting hit hard down here in Twin Falls. The South Hills had good snow and stuff like that. Our fawn mortality, we go out every fall and we radio collar fawns, and then we can monitor how many of them survive so that we know how the deer population is going. I don't think that we've had a mortality in the South Hills yet. When we were doing that, we also measure body fat on does, and the rump fat on the does in the South Hills were as was as high as it's ever been since we've been taking rump fat measurements. It was actually the highest, and this year our fawns were heavier than the last 6 or 7 year average. Um, Fat fawns and fat does mean we can have a lot of winter and still have good survival. And I think our deer populations south of the interstate are just we're not going to lose very many fawns. Up north, however, things were about normal, but we've got a lot of snow and we're losing quite a few fawns up north.
I heard was just caught me by surprise. I was doing some work in the kitchen yesterday, and I had the TV on in the living room, and Bill Hemmer at Fox News is talking to the weatherman, and he said I have a friend who lives in Sun Valley, and he said he thinks they should change the name because he hasn't seen the sun in 4 weeks.
Yeah, it did turn around. And we're very fortunate up there. I think it's going to limit some of our mortality just because we've got a ton of south-facing slopes open again finally. Um, However, I'm guessing they're probably getting this snowstorm. But the today it's crappy out there. In 2 days, you'll have forgotten about it unless you was in a car wreck and you're still getting your fenders fixed, which I saw plenty of driving over here. And so I guess that's just kind of when you're out there driving around, be a little bit careful.
And you still have. There was somebody who told me a few weeks back that there was a herd of elk that were wandering over in Buell and up north toward Hagerman or west toward Hagerman.
Well,
Um,
the Gooding area and out by Castleford, we've had a lot of elk damage in corn crops, and we've been hitting deer left and right out here by Travelers Oasis. We was able to get well, ITD just put it up, slow down signs for deer and stuff. If they show that, um, have a sign like that on the edge of the road, guess what, folks? There's a reason for that on there because we're hitting a lot of deer. So, and the only way you don't hit a deer is not by turning your lights on bright and going 90 miles an hour. You can use them your lights on bright. Look for the eye reflection, but you have to slow down just to increase your reaction time. I drive that road every day, a couple times a day, because that's how I go to work. I never go through there faster than 65 miles an hour. It's just a rule of thumb for me because I don't want to hit a deer.
my mother taught me that rule. Look for the eye
Yeah.
reflection when I was a young driver.
Yep. And so, and it's good to do, and you can't run your lights on bright all the time because it ticks the oncoming traffic off from the guy you're following. But it's not fair for them. But, I slow down quite a bit through that section just, and we're having that issue all over. I mean, we're hitting a lot of deer in town, anything near Rock Creek, anything near the canyon. Um, they're getting pushed out to those fields looking for feed, and people are going too fast, and a lot of critters running around crossing roads right now.
It's 9:15, and Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game is our guest during this hour of the program. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. It's 26. Now, I mentioned the potential fee increase. This is one area that's going to make a lot of people out there sit up and take notice. But this is not being done just because somebody wants a little icing on the cake.
Well, yeah, it's not that. Yeah, we're not. It's been since 2005 since we had a fee increase for residents. Um, think how many times, yeah, how much gas has gone up, or well, it may be about the same on gas, but everything else has gone up. I mean, clothing and food, and I mean, we're struggling. I mean, I think of the cost of a vehicle, the change in 12 years. I remember when you can buy a decent four-wheel drive pickup for under 20,000. Now you can't even come close to that, and so everything's costing a lot more. And the thing is the type of fee increase. It's not really a fee. It's called price lock. and we're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. It will be a fee increase for some. For myself, it will be 0 fee increase. And the reason I say that is not because I work for the department, it's because I buy a hunting and fishing license every year. So if you buy a hunting and fishing license every year, Bill, and you buy one and this passes, you are locked into the price that you're paying right now. So there will not be a fee increase. What we're trying to do is eliminate churn, or the people that buy a hunting license and fishing license this year, but then don't buy it next year, or maybe not the next year. And it'll shock people. Um, I about died when I found out that 70% of our sportsmen do not buy hunting licenses every year. Only 30% of you guys out there that are hunters and anglers buy a hunting or fishing license every year. The rest of everybody else churns in and out in 5 years. Our goal with this program is to get a few more of those people that only buy a license once every 5 years. If we can get 10% of the people, they put a little graph together. If we have people that only buy a license, one 10% of the people that only buy a license once every 5 years, it will increase our annual budget by $2 million. That's if we can get 10% of the people that only buy a license once every 5 years. And that's what the goal of this price lock is we're hoping to get people saying, well, I can save some money. It's going to be a 20% increase is what we're looking at. And so like if you buy, I got another little graph that I have to pull up. If you buy a hunting license, um, right now in Idaho, with no fees or no increases for a deer tag, I can buy a deer tag for $32.50. If the fee increase goes through and you don't lock yourself into the price lock, your deer license will go up to $37.50. So roughly $5 is the increase that you'll see. Those that buy it every year will be locked in at that price for the next 5 years. And we're just running this as a test to see um, if it works. We're hoping this will work. We'll pick up a few more people to be continual buyers, buy a hunting and fishing license every year. The other thing is people go, oh, it's real expensive. Well, I want to give you a little, and I understand budgets are tight. Everybody, we all have a few things that we hate to spend any extra money, but when it comes to deer hunting, right now for deer hunting, we are the cheapest in the West. We're $32.50. Montana is $4. Colorado's $41. Washington's $45. Wyoming's 55.50, and so we're $32. We're the cheapest on deer. On elk, Montana beats us by $5, and then we're one of the lowest states in the country for hunting and fishing licenses right now.
Hold that thought. We've got more on this and some of your telephone calls too, because I know that some of you will have some comments or questions about this. Kelton Hatch, our guest from Idaho Fish and Game, coming up on 920. Bill Colley as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. It's 24. Our studio guest, Kelton Hatch, joining us from Idaho Fish and Game. He's here for the entire hour. If you've got a question or comment for him, 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. You can also drop me an email at bill.colley at townsquaremedia.com, bill.colley at townsquaremedia.com. You had mentioned, we were in the break, that your agency, Idaho Fish and Game, it's not getting any money from the general tax fund.
Yeah, it shocks a lot of people when I tell them that. We're a dedicated fund agency. That means we are paid for by sportsmen. The only money that we get is the sales of hunting and fishing licenses, and then there's a federal excise tax that comes in on the sale of firearms and ammunition, and that's Pittman Roberts and Dingle Johnson excise tax that goes on that comes from that. Um, Over 50-60% of our budget comes from just hunting and fishing licenses, and the rest of it's federal funds that are gathered through like hunting and fishing licenses. And so no, it's kind of interesting because we're one of the only organizations like that in the state that doesn't you know get anything from the state coffers.
We have a caller looking to join us. And caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Kelton Hatch. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple quick questions to ask him. Number one, what percentage of the money do you take in the state goes to fish, and what part it goes to the big game? And I think the public needs to know the money you're taking in has to know. We need to know about that. Secondly, my second question is, with your fee increase, what are you going to do with it? And depredation's another question. You'll always have depredation if you keep letting the landowners lock these people out and won't let them access the property. You'll never, never, never be able to enter it. And so I think you guys need to address that and stop passing the buck on down the line, because depredation is created because people can't hunt on this ground. So that's my questions. Have him answer it if he can. Thank you.
No, great questions, and those are ones we get quite often. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact amount that goes into just hunting and fishing. Um, we put a lot of money into fishing because we have the anadromous fish program, and we've got a lot of a listed species, steelhead and salmon, and so there's a ton of money. We also get money from the Bonneville Power Administration, a BPA funding to help run that, and Idaho Power, and so we get some other funding um, from those guys to help run that. But on this depredation issue, the tough thing is see, I appreciate his question on that. It's such a complicated issue because we're dealing with private property rights. Landowners, a lot of our landowners, um, and not necessarily as many in this part of the state, but in eastern Idaho, 75% of our winter range is on private ground, and so those deer rely on people's uh, their rangeland, their farms to winter. We have a program that if they put a claim in for depredation, they have to allow some type of hunting on there, otherwise they can't get the claim. However, it's still a private property right still. I mean, these people, I understand it's hard when you're looking at a rancher or a farmer that has, 3 or 5,000 acres or smaller, 2 or 300 acres, and it makes you mad when you see a deer and you're driving down the road and you see a deer or elk on it. But it's kind of like if you had a deer or elk in your own backyard. How many people would you want camping back there, walking through there, driving through there, getting their vehicle stuck there, kicking their soda pop and candy bar wrappers out in your back field? Populations continue to grow, and the same problems that we see in downtown Twin with people littering and people vandalizing things, that happens more and more on these ranching areas, and these farmers and ranchers are huge in the production of deer and elk. Without their property, we would lose a lot of our wildlife. Because our wildlife herds are increasing so dramatically right now, we've got a couple things we can do. We either need to reduce the herds by a lot because, like this gentleman alluded to, is yeah, we've got depredation issues. We'll have over 700,000 in claims this year alone because we've had so many elk. I guess it's these guys' private property, and a herd of elk moves in there and destroys their whole cash crop by no fault of their own, because we've opted to have elk in these areas, in areas that traditionally hadn't had elk or at levels this high. And so it's just one of those real complicated deals. Right now, through the Senate Resource Committee, we've actually been asked to come up with a new program to be able to address all our depredation claims. And on top of this, this fee lock uh, program we're looking at, they're also looking at basically doing a habitat stamp to increase the coffers for depredation on agriculture by $5, and that will be pushed through by the Senate. I mean the legislature in Boise, if that goes through, and that will be to help pay for access onto these private properties that people want to hunt or onto to buy access rights to go on there and hunt, and also to cover damages from deer and elk and pronghorn on these farms.
Quick note, just got this in. You may see the trouble if you're coming from Bliss and you're headed eastbound on I-84. The eastbound lane's apparently closed right now because of an accident. We're going to squeeze another caller in. We've got about a minute before the break, but we'll get the caller on the air, and we may have to talk about it following the call or following the break. But caller, you're up next. You're on KLIX.
Good morning, gentlemen. I just wanted to make a comment on that other one. You know, I have been hunting in Unit 49 for 20-something years, and I've seen roads closed after closed after closed, which makes it harder and harder to hunt the animals. But it's all been due to disrespect of the land. I've been back there hiking and watched four-wheelers park on top of hills and glass, and then when they leave their soda cans, their tuna cans, and everything else. That four-wheeler took that can up there full. It sure can take it back to camp empty.
Well said.
I appreciate that. That's the tough part about all these, Bill. They're very emotional because people hold hunting so near and dear to their heart. Well, as tight as we hold on to hunting and we love it and we enjoy it, farmers, and think about how much you think about your home. If somebody came into your house and threw stuff on the ground or in your backyard, the farmers feel that same way about their land.
We have more coming up. Kelton Hatch joining us from Idaho Fish and Game this morning. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Well, 24. It doesn't look like the temperature is going to change very fast anytime soon. Coming up on 9:34, Kelton Hatch, our guest from Idaho Fish and Game. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 24. Telephone number to reach the show, 736-0300, 736-0300. I guess we could predict that there were going to be some people who have questions and comments about fee increases.
Well, it fires people up, and that's good. This is what this is about, trying to get the information out there.
We have a first caller of this half hour with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Yes, just a little perspective on hunting rights and how people lose them. I've had people hunt on my place without asking. Boy Scout group camping in the desert next to my place pulls up the cedar fence post for firewood. What kind of an example is that? And then you wonder why landowners tell people, no hunting, no trespassing. That's it. I would much rather put up with the deer depredation, which I do and have, than put up with inconsiderate sportsmen and trespassers. Thank you.
It happens.
And what that gentleman brought to us right there is so common when we're working with landowners. We have a gentleman that his whole job is sportsman, landowner, coordinator, and it's tough. A lot of them. That's why Access Yes works so well. We found that if we can put some signs up on the property, we have Access Yes. Our problem, and it's a walk-in only area. The sportsmen really patrol each other a lot better, and we have less problems on those properties. Our problem is we can only fund about a third of the properties that we get bid into Access Yes because of funding.
Want to remind people, some of you, I guess, telephone. If you have an old landline, you're probably not impacted by this, but we have on our website, if you go there today, a list, and it shows you all of the areas with power outages this morning that due to the high winds. If you go to newsradio1310.com, you can take a look at that. It's a fairly impressive map with all of the different places. It actually identifies each and every place where there's a power outage this morning.
That's why I'm so pretty, because I had to do my little, sponge bath because we was out of power. It kicked off at about 4:30. So, I think there's over in that area, there's like 7 or 10 or 20,000 people were out.
Hopefully they still have radio and, they can listen. A lot of people have batteries for the radio.
Yeah, there you go.
Or they've got generators.
So they can listen to you, Bill.
They get up in the morning, and I'm sure that's the first thing on their minds. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, guys. Hey, I understand the depredation is an issue that we got to get taken care of, and there's got to be repercussions on both sides, from the sportsmen and from the landowners. However, when it comes to fee increases, he talked about how price of automobiles and houses and gave a few comparisons and whatnot. Well, those services have all increased. I mean, you can't buy the same kind of car nowadays that you could 20 years ago for the same price, obviously, because look at the quality of stuff you get. And I think the general consensus from a lot of people is the quality that the sportsmen are getting from the fish and game department themselves hasn't improved a whole lot. So why is there a need for an increase? And also, can you explain to us what costs so much for the Access Yes? I mean, you guys talked about funding for that program, and can you just educate us a little more on why that costs money to get permission and stuff? Thanks.
You bet. No, and I understand. And right now we have, personally, I think things are doing pretty well. I got a hunt in the 70s when it was the glory days of Idaho, and I grew up in eastern Idaho on a ranch, and so there's a lot of good hunting. The thing that we're battling right now is just population expansion. Uh, we're getting more hunters on the face of things. We're losing private property to hunt. Right now, we're sitting at over 120,000 elk in Idaho, which is as high as we've ever had population and estimated population of elk in the history of elk in Idaho since we've been keeping count. However, we're doing that without having very many elk in the Selway, the Frank Church, the Lolo, and areas that traditionally had a lot of elk. And we've got some habitat issues, we've got some predation issues up in there that we're trying to work through and we're struggling with. But on these front ranges, we do have a lot of elk. The deer hunting, we're just getting more and more people pushing for the opportunity to hunt deer. Just for an example, Unit 43 last year, we went from 1,700 hunters up there about 6 years ago to almost 5,000 hunters up there after Eastman's and Hunting Full put it out as one of the number one places in Idaho to hunt. And so we had a real flux of hunters up there. We're in a lot of change right now, and so we're trying to change some of the management tools that we're using out there. And I understand there's a lot of frustration with a lot of people what's going on, but that's why these public meetings are so important, that you come and voice your opinion, because you may not see a change this year on the things that you suggest, but those are things that we mull on for the next year or 5 years and try to get things changed. On the Access Yes, the reason it costs so much is because we pay per acre to get into private land. When you get a 100-acre field, if it's on the Snake River, that could cost us $5 an acre to get access for boaters to get a road through that area, because it's such a pertinent spot to get a lot of sportsmen to access site. I'll talk more about that when we come back.
Want to mention telephone number? Hold on, 736-0300, short break. You're listening to News Radio 1310, KLIX. Our studio guest is Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game. We're at 942. We're at 25 as far, well, you might even be cooler in some spots. Depends on which way, I guess, the wind is blowing. The wind chill is going to be obviously a bigger factor than the temperature today. We have a caller with us. The telephone number is 736-0300.
Let me finish on that last one just for a second. So Access Yes, the way it works is landowners have, like, we'll buy 10,000 acres up in Fairfield, somewhere above there, for access for deer and upland game birds, and that rancher will bid that in, and they can bid it in. Some of them donate it, just say, yeah, you guys can use it, just sign it and patrol it more. Others will say, well, we want 50 cents an acre. And like I said earlier, we do pay a lot more for these little access pieces on the Snake River, but we got several thousand acres. We put together a 60-page book in the Magic Valley of all the Access Yes properties. And so we do buy quite a bit of it, and that's why it costs so much, because we're paying per acre.
We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yes, I was calling about the feed site at Big Smoky. If that was utilized, wouldn't it take and pull the elk and deer, or mostly the elk, over to that feed site instead of feeding them south of Peekaboo and pulling them down through the cities and having all the issues with the farm ground and the Bellevue Triangle and all the cars that are hitting them? I mean, I don't think that anybody has to die when we have a beautiful feed site that was proven to work for many years. So I was just wondering why we're not using that.
Well, and I appreciate the call, and that's a good point. Our big thing that changed on the face of Idaho was wolves. And once wolves came in, the elk didn't want to stay back at the Big Smoky feed site very often, because they really started pushing those elk out of there. That's when our migration out of Unit 43, out of Schoolhouse Gulch, out of all our feed sites down in there. We had Smoky Bar, we had the Big Smoky feed site. We had all these different feed sites in there. But when wolves came in there, we couldn't hunt them because there was no way we couldn't manage them. Those elk started migrating out of there. I started here 14 years ago. I moved to the Magic Valley from eastern Idaho, came over here. I was on a flight in Unit 45 and witnessed the first herd of elk in Unit 45. It was 50 head of elk just south of Kings Crown, and that was the first herd that Randy Smith had ever seen in Idaho, in that part of Idaho, and he'd been here for 20 years before I got here. And so we've had an increase. We've had some big fires. Elk numbers have grown, and then wolves have really pushed those elk out. They'll migrate. We're hunting them, and we're not seeing a lot of wolf depredation in any of those units anymore. We actually have a rougher time finding packs back there. Fortunately, they're delisted and we can have the hunts on them now. But that's the biggest reason we can't get them back there is because they don't want to stay anymore.
Want to thank you for the call. We'll squeeze another caller in here for a moment. It's 9:46, and caller, you're up next. You're on the air on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Caller, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question. I'd like to know what the Fish and Game is going to do about these valley elk that are down in ranches all over the place. Last year, I counted over 800 in 2 different ranches, and they wouldn't let you in to hunt. They were absconded down in there, and you couldn't get them out. They wouldn't run them out, and that was a lot of the elk in that valley.
Yeah.
So
it's one of those things that we battle with all the time. If the landowner ends up turning in a claim, I mean, we've got so many issues right now in the Bellevue Triangle from the last gentleman's call. We've tried depredation hunts, we've tried landowner permits, we've tried greenfield hunts, we'll find hunters and bring them in to shoot these, and we bought tree stands. I mean, these tripod tree stands for areas because people are fishing with a bunch of people and they want the bullets going in. There's just a lot of people up there. I don't know. I wish I had a magic wand and I could just lift these elk and dump them in the middle of the Frank Church. Just because we've got so many issues that we're facing right now. I mean, as bad as it is up north, I think we're going to be in for a bigger wreck in Unit 47, 46. We're actually looking at increasing tags down there. Nevada's been flying because they're really, really trying to limit their elk in Nevada. They're giving away cow tags with a deer tag because numbers have increased so much. We've got close to 6,000 elk from Bruno across the Jarbidge, on the other side of the Bruno over by Grasmere and down over by Three Creek, and that population just keeps growing. And when we get in these really checkerboarded areas with private property and BLM, it's a nightmare because those elk are not stupid. You fire 2 or 3 rounds at them and they run straight for the place that nobody can shoot at them, the middle of some private property. And so that's something that we're going to be dealing with. And if you've got any good ideas that will work with the law, please comment on our forums online or give us a call at the regional office, 324-4359.
Our guest is Kelton Hatch. He's here from Idaho Fish and Game, joins us on a monthly basis. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're at 25 and 949. One of the reasons that you have costs for programs is because you spend a lot of time with younger people. You take them fishing, for instance, in the summer. There are education programs. All of this is because if you don't do that now, fewer and fewer young people are turning into hunters and fishermen. And do you want to have anybody in the future to buy these licenses?
And that's a tough part. I mean, I really feel fortunate to live in Idaho. And I know there's a lot of controversy on the way we manage wildlife and stuff, but I really don't want to go to a DNR. I do not want to become a general fund agency. I do not want, I love the fact that we're supported by sportsmen. Everybody owns the wildlife, but it's sportsman run. and our goal with these youth programs, I mean, I take on our trout in the classroom program, I take about 3,500 kids fishing a year. It blew me away the first time I walked into a school in downtown Twin. I felt like I was in inner city somewhere because I asked the kids, "How many of you guys have been fishing?" And I've had as low as 10% of the kids in a 6th grade class that had been fishing before. And I'm sitting here going, we live in Idaho. We at that time we had 1.6 million people in the state. When I grew up, there were 700,000 people in the state. So you can see how much things have changed. But people just are not getting out. I mean, you guys that are hunters and anglers, and I love the calls that we're getting from you, but you guys are a minority. Where I grew up, they canceled school on the opening day of deer season.
Yeah.
Nobody showed up because the girls were out hunting deer, which is great because my daughter's an avid sportsman. My wife is also, but it's not that way anymore. I mean, my son, he'll actually get harassed by kids. He goes to Kimberly and he gets teased by certain kids for being a hunter. Things are changing, and with that change, we do a lot of education. We're trying to keep people abreast of what's going on. I talk to a lot of non-hunting groups just to say, well, this is why we have trapping. This is why trapping's important, because it helps manage our wildlife. This is why hunting's important. And we give a lot of things like that. And so, I understand it's tough. We don't feel like we're seeing things better. Um, I guess I look at Idaho. I get a hunt every year. I can hunt deer or elk on over-the-counter tags. I've killed over 30 deer, and I've killed just about as many elk on general tags without a draw because we've got a ton of opportunity like that. And some of our surrounding neighbors get to hunt every 15 years or every 10 years. We really need to look at what we really want. If we want to hunt trophies, there's a lot of places I can go hunt trophies, and I can play the points game, and I play the points game in other states, and you can play that. But fortunately, you can grab your kid, you can go buy an over the counter tag right now, and you can go hunting and you have really good success. I mean, some of our general hunts, that's why we've got 5,000 people hunting 43 because we're killing 15, 16 100 deer, bucks out of that unit. It's too many people for me. I don't hunt there. It's too crowded. I'd rather throw a backpack on. So I appreciate it, all the comments, and I do hope people will call us, give us your comments, what you'd like to see. Go online, fill out our website, our questionnaire, and it'd be great to get some more information from you guys.
9:52. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Kelton Hatch.
Kelton, you get a lot of calls regarding elk and trying to figure out how to get them out. I work on a ranch where we use a talk call to get rid of birds that try to eat the feed.
Yeah.
Can't you use some kind of a wolf call or something like that would scare them out of those areas?
Great comment, and yes, it works really well. Poppers and cracker shells, and we actually have some det cord that we wrap with M80s in it and burn it down fence lines. The problem is, just like your hot calls or any of those other things, we have these cannons, these propane cannons. For the first week, it works great. After that, they're grazing right next to it because they say, oh, there's no danger in it. They learn pretty quick that I can move in there, and so you have to really keep changing things up. But I do appreciate the call. There is a couple things I wanted to get to if I could, just for you guys out there to do some little housekeeping. We are having a trapping class next month on the 24th and 25th. We're going to have it at Murtaugh Reservoir. We've got a building out there that we're going to be teaching this class. It's basic trapping. If you bought a trapping license within the last 5 years and the legislature has been looking at a bill to push through that we're going to have mandatory trapper's ed for all these new trappers within the last 5 or 6 years. We're having that class on the 24th and 25th. Go online on our hunter education, and you can click on the trapping class. Also, right now we've got 4 classes in the Magic Valley Regional Office for Hunter's Ed. We have one in Wendell, one in Albion, one in Paul, one in Shoshone, one in Filer, one in Glens Ferry, and one in Burley. And then we got some combo classes in Murtaugh and Burley, where you can get your hunter and bow hunter ed at the same time. If you want to have your kid put in, or if you got somebody that hasn't taken hunter ed, right now is the time to start looking at getting those hunter ed classes. This is when we push the most through. We'll be having field courses just about every other week up until the draw, and so start getting in for that. The other big thing is we've got and now I can't remember the date. There, oh, right here it is. We've got some plantings that we're going to be doing on for fires. We're inviting the general public to come to Buckhorn Canyon south of Murtaugh on 3/18. What month is this? It's February, so it's March 18th. And then we've got one in Kenyon Canyon at Hagerman on March 25th. And we've got one out at Three Creek on the Mud Flats Road on uh, April 1st. In the Jar Bridge area. These are plantings. We're going out and do bitter brush and sagebrush plantings. We're hoping to get a good group of people out there so we can put a lot of plants in the ground. We'll also be taking a bunch of school kids out to plant some at 5 other plantings. But we're looking, these are for the general public. If you got a service group or a scout group, or you want to do some team building with your work crew, bring them out there, and we'd love to get to talk to you, and we'll talk more about these issues. And the other deal is we've got, it's called the blind cleanup or the river corridor cleanup. We're going to be doing this on April 15th. You need to call Megan Roos at 539-4428. She's our officer in the Buell area. She is going to be spearheading a river cleanup to clean up the old duck blinds, shotgun hauls, garbage that gets blown in there, just to clean it up for the wildlife and for when we go down there. And you can call her at that number, 539-4428, or call us at the regional office, and we'll get your service group signed up for that. And we'd love to see you out, be able to rub elbows with you and talk more about issues.
We only got about 40 seconds to go. We didn't get into much of the aerial survey. You referenced it a couple of points.
Oh yeah, that's right. Right now, we've done our comp counts. Buck doe ratios had looked really good before winter, and fawn counts had looked really good. Right now, we're doing overall comp counts. If you see a ship or a helicopter, I should say, in the South Hills between here and Albion, we're going to be flying down there, weather permitting, trying to get an overall deer number. We'll be counting moose to see what kind of moose populations. We're going to hit some certain areas trying to figure out what's going on with the moose and the elk down there also, but it's primarily a deer flight. People don't understand it costs us about $1,000 an hour to run a helicopter to do those counts. We only fly the South Hills once every 5 years because of the expense. We've got 60 hours in fly time right now on this, and so when I first started here, it was almost $300 an hour to run a helicopter. Now it's gone to 1,000. So, hey, good hunting. Get out and then, well, there's not much hunting going on. Bear hunting's coming up, but get out and enjoy the outdoors.
Want to thank Kelton for dropping by. We'll see you again in a month, or if not sooner.
Probably sooner. We got a little late this time, so hopefully we can pound something out earlier.
9:58. We've got to take a short break. News coming up in just a moment from Fox on the Fox Radio Network. Rush Limbaugh following Fox at 10 o'clock. And then Sean Hannity at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Glenn Beck at 4. Dave Ramsey tonight between 7 and 10 o'clock. And God willing, the creek don't rise. I'm back here tomorrow morning between 8 and 10 o'clock.